On today's episode of the Power Podcast, I'm joined by Kevin Milisi. He's the Vice President of Marketing and Technology for U.S. Water. And I've also got Nathan Bach, Vice President of Engineering Services and Equipment, and Joe Torino, Vice President of Strategic Corporate Accounts, all with U.S. Water. Thank you, all three of you, for joining me on the show. And I guess to start things off, I'll turn it over to Kevin to kind of tell a little bit about U.S. Water and the industries that you serve.
Well, thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Again, we're part of the U.S. Water organization, which is now a part of the Carita group of companies, which I think we'll be chatting about in a little more detail in just a minute. But we're in the business of industrial water and process treatment and applications from the perspective of both equipment systems and chemistry. And associated services and other engineering activities that go hand in hand with those. We serve a variety of verticals or industries, such as food and beverage and biofuels, the commercial and institutional markets, and of course, the power industry, and then a host of other industries as well. So we're very diverse in that regard. And we're in the business basically of creating value for our customers. We always think in terms of producing a very positive ROI in our customers' investment in our products and services. And we take an approach of a strategic partnership with the best interests of the customer in mind.
You mentioned Carita, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but U.S. Water was previously owned by Elite, which is an energy company based in Duluth, Minnesota, and U.S. Water, your headquarters are in St. Michael, Minnesota. Carita is an international water management company that's headquartered in Tokyo, Japan, and they also have some other subsidiaries that are part of their organization. One is based in Shakopee, Minnesota, I believe. That's Fremont Industries. And there's another one out in California called Avista Technologies that Carita also recently purchased. So how does Carita plan to integrate all of these together, or are they going to operate them as separate businesses as they have in the past? What can you tell us about that?
Well, certainly the intention is to integrate those businesses. We're in the midst of that process right now. It's being very methodical and thoughtful in how we go about that. So we're well on our way towards that integration of most of those businesses into one. It's a little bit premature to discuss the timing of completing those integrations. But yes, that's very much in play. And as you might suspect, we're taking all the great and strengths of these various previously separate entities and combining them in a way that just takes our value proposition to a very, very different place. We were previously owned by Elite, the energy company and effectively a holding company operating out of Duluth, Minnesota, and they were the owners of Minnesota Power. And our experience with Elite was certainly a good one. We had some great growth during that period in a lot of different dimensions. So it was a very positive portion of our evolution as a company. But being part of the Carita organization is obviously quite different. They have been in our industry since their founding 70 years ago, having just celebrated their 70th anniversary. And they're very similar to U.S. Water in that Carita is both a major equipment and engineered systems provider, as well as chemistry. So being able to offer both those broad portfolios of products and services is akin to what the DNA of U.S. Water was, and offering integrated solutions. So they're obviously very knowledgeable about our business and our industry, And it's a great next stage in the evolution of U.S. water in the U.S. marketplace. So we're very, very excited about what we're experiencing now and what the future holds for us.
So do you think the name will eventually change to Curita Water, or will they continue to have U.S. Water and some of these other brands?
Well, again, I think it's a little bit early to really get into that, Aaron. Certainly, we'll continue to leverage all the brand equity associated with the legacy companies of U.S. Water and Fremont, for example. But again, there's a lot of positive brand equity there. So we will systematically integrate all those things and make that equity come together at some point. I just really aren't in a position right now to comment on those specifics.
Sure, I understand. And I guess from my own better understanding of the business, did you consider Fremont a competitor, or how did they match up against U.S. Water in the past?
So yeah, absolutely. Fremont was a competitor. We're both based in the greater Minneapolis area. U.S. Water northwest of the city of Minneapolis in a suburb called St. Michael, Minnesota, and Fremont southwest of Minneapolis in Shakopee, Minnesota. We absolutely were competitors here, particularly in the upper Midwest geography, which is really where Fremont's business base was concentrated. And we competed in several different marketplaces, not the power industry per se, but I would say in the biofuels and commercial and institutional and food and beverage, and again, a variety of other miscellaneous industries. But yes, we were clearly competitors without a doubt. So that's part of the magic of integration, is making all those alignments work going forward, which takes time and energy to do it the right way and with our customers' interests at the forefront of our thinking.
When it comes to water, I have a little bit of background with it. I was the O&M manager at a biomass plant in Minnesota, so I am actually familiar with the area that you guys are in. At our plant, we had well water that we used, and we ran it through water softeners, and then we had a reverse osmosis system and some electronic deionization equipment that we made our demineralized water with. And I'm curious if that's a common setup, or if things have changed over time, and new technology is kind of stepping in and filling new needs in the water treatment process business. What is the new technology, or have the systems not really changed much?
Aaron, this is Nathan. And good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. So to answer your questions on the technology changes that have been out there as far as it relates to producing demineralized water for power plants, is what we're seeing is still a transition from older generation plants to maybe use primary ion exchange, cation, anion mixed beds to produce demineralized water, moving to membrane treatment systems. And those that had older generation membrane treatment systems, maybe such as RO and EDI, incorporating things like ultrafilters ahead of the RO to reduce fouling and extend membrane life, going to two-pass RO to reduce the loading on the EDIs and the potential scaling and fouling concerns that had been prominent in kind of earlier generations of EDI machines. And then how do we apply chemistry for things like decarbonation or gas transfer membranes for decarbonation in between passes of RO. So it becomes a little bit more complex, really driving efficiency and reduce and extended the life of the equipment and the membranes themselves.
What kind of considerations go into designing a water treatment system for a power plant? I mean, what do you have to evaluate when you do that for a new plant, or maybe when you go into an older plant and do some retrofits? What do you look at?
Great question. So when we design a treatment system, first we obviously must consider the boiler pressure, and that's really for any steam system. The considerations needed for a 900-pound and 1800 pound boiler, et cetera, are different. And that allows us to look at what constituents of concern do we need to consider treating for. And then we really need to look at the raw water source. You mentioned having a plant that operates on well water will have different challenges than one that operates on surface water, or maybe even a plant that has multi-source. Maybe they have a blend of surface and well water, or multiple wells of different depths coming and blending into a common feed point into the plant in order to provide the amount of water that it needs. And knowing where the water comes from really helps us determine, how we might need to treat. Well water will be likely higher in ionic content, and surface water will tend to have a higher level of suspended matter to deal with. Source variability and temperature are also large considerations in the design of a treatment train. If you're on surface water, for example, rivers tend to have seasons of runoff, or lakes that may turn over due to seasonal variability, wells that may change based on depths and drawdown. And so understanding that raw water source, again, is important.
Yeah, Aaron, this is Joe Torino. Just to add to Nate's comments, what we're seeing in a lot of areas of the country, some of the newer gas-fired combined cycle plants utilize what's called recycled water as their primary source of water. And basically what it is municipal wastewater that's been treated to a certain level but contains different contaminants just based on what area of the country you're in. So we look at that also in the considerations that are associated with that phenomenon. Also, on the West Coast, there's 100% recycle or zero blowdown facilities, which pose another problem that we're equipped to handle. So when you talk about these trends, the things that Nate mentioned are critical, but also areas of the country having the different regulations in effect are also very critical.
Are there any areas where people frequently may try to cut costs, to save money on their equipment, and it looks like a good short-term solution, but in the long run, it ends up adding to expenses? Is there any situations or examples you can give of that?
One of the areas from the chemistry side, Nate was going to get into something called mobile water, whereas some companies utilize packaged containerized systems, and they buy the water on a volume basis over a specific term. And sometimes what happens in that case is that, some of these systems aren't as operable. But when these systems aren't operable, there's emergency water that has to come in, and far better to have a stationary system in some of these facilities that the companies are engaged in. Another area where some folks on the chemistry side is they overlook the necessity to monitor and control the condenser water system. And in some cases, when you have fouling in these condensers, you can have back pressure on the turbine, which will reduce efficiency. They do a great job of monitoring steam quality. They do a great job of monitoring internal boiler water quality with all sorts of different equipment. And sometimes they try and cut costs on the condenser side because, in most cases, the velocity is much higher. The metallurgy is much more exotic, and the thought process is we can't foul because of this. So those are two areas that I think maybe some folks kind of look to cut costs, and in the long run it can hurt them.
I know another area that is often, as an operator or as a former operator, sometimes you would not necessarily want to take recommendations from vendors because, vendors have kind of a conflict of interest, thinking, the more chemical you sell, the more money you make. But I know that's not how most salesmen think. They're trying to help their customers and do the best for their customers. So can you think of any areas where U.S. Water has helped a customer save money, even though it might have cost in the short run as far as sales, but in the long run, it's helped your business?
That's a good question. And one of the things that we train our sales engineers on are to establish credibility and build trust. The other part of an operational facility is that typically you've got three functions, one being chemical, one being mechanical, and one being operational. with a lot of folks out there in the field today, they can only do one or maybe two of those things. So they have a tendency to sell towards those two of the competencies. And sometimes what that causes is not looking at the third one. We as a company, we're integrated in everything we do from both the mechanical, operational, and chemical aspect. So our sales engineers are trained to find a solution and the best solution that fits. And, there's also something called alignment of compensation relative to some of the things that you said, most salespeople just trying to sell products. So, it's hard to do, but I think we're pretty close to aligning our compensation with what the customer's expectations are and how we manage the customer's expectations and ensure that we consider all three of the possible solutions as opposed to one or the other just so we make more money.
Again, I keep going back to my own experience, but when we operated our water treatment plant, quite often, we thought in our own minds, or I think most of the management did, that the chemicals were kind of a commodity. You could get them from vendor A, B, or C, whichever one was cheapest was the best option. But is that a misconception? Are there differences between vendor products, or is the difference maker really just the rep who's supplying them and the knowledge that he brings to the table?
Aaron, clearly the rep is the most important aspect of the water treatment program or the program associated with, again, mechanical, operational, and chemical. But there are some innovations and technology advancements in certain areas which really are differentiators in the marketplace today. As an example, in power plants, one of the biggest issues that they have now is flow-accelerated corrosion, and that's causing numerous problems with line failures and plant shutdowns. And the chemistry involved in that for many, many years was just oxygenation of the systems. Well, Carita has developed a process where they use a filmer to reduce dramatically flow-accelerated corrosion in major power systems. So that technology was not available 5, 10, 15 years ago. So there are innovations that occur now that are differentiators. But, as you said, that representative is extremely important because he's the face of U.S. Water and Carita, and he's also the leader of that account that the power plant personnel looks to ensure that he's given the right recommendation. So some of that hasn't changed, but there are innovations today that are differentiators from one company to the other.
And so my last question for you is what is one takeaway that the audience should get from this podcast? What is the, whether it be how to operate their water treatment plant a little bit better, or how to do a water-saving technique, chemical-saving technique, anything that maybe would extend a membrane life? What can they take away that would give them their biggest bang for the buck?
I think I can give two. When you look at the most critical items in the power plant, one is steam quality, and the other is condenser cleanliness. And I think when most plants, they spend a significant amount of cash and money on capital equipment designated to determine steam quality, to determine water quality in the steam generation unit itself. But on the condenser side, in some cases, they don't use that same type of monitoring equipment to ensure that fouling is kept at a minimum and corrosion is kept at a minimum in those systems. So, one of the things that I would take away is that not so much from the equipment side, because on the steam generation side, typically you get the best equipment to give you the best quality water and the best quality steam that you can. There is monitoring equipment that is available today that will allow you to measure biofilm, obviously measure corrosion on a more instantaneous, from a more instantaneous perspective on the condenser system. So one of the takeaways I would say is, hey, the steam side is important, but don't forget the condenser side as equally as important to ensuring efficiency of electricity generation.
Aaron, this is Kevin. Just to add to Joe's comments, if I was to kind of distill our conversation down to a takeaway, and it really is implied in Joe's comments and throughout our whole conversation here today, is that the takeaway is we can't just think of it in terms of chemistry or equipment. We have to think of the combination of those things. And there are lots of great examples where capital equipment may have minimized chemical consumption, but delivered a better technical result and a lower overall total cost of operation footprint for our customer. There are other situations where chemistry may have played the lead role and equipment was important but secondary. So every situation can be unique. It's a function of the customer's assets, their design, the water qualities that they're working with, the other challenges they might be confronted with, for example, water scarcity or the discharge of conventional phosphate-bearing treatments and having to minimize those and look for alternative chemistries. So my takeaway would be that it's not one or the other. It's the ability to be able to look at both of those levers and looking at the total solution and put them together in the right proportions to deliver the best and most cost-effective result.
All right, and that's a great way to close it out. So thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate the insights you gave about water, and good luck integrating all of these new companies into the Curita brand.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Thank you.